How you doing, guys? Dr. Nathan Thompson here with the Exemplify Health Center. Happy Tuesday evening. I am just actually getting ready to go pick up my son from practice, and I had a couple extra minutes that I wanted to spend with you before I had to jump on over there. So I wanted to jump online and say hello, and I wanted to talk to you about this topic. So you see that the topic is called "How is your cortisol rhythm?" Okay, so this is really, really important. We're going to talk more about this at our stress event coming up on Saturday at the office at 9 o'clock, because there's all these different stressors that can interfere with your cortisol rhythm. And this is really, 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 really important to actually know and be able to test what your cortisol rhythm is, because it gives a lot of insight as far as how stressed the body is and how long that you've been experiencing any kind of stress. So, hey, if you're popping on right now, just make sure that you wave, say hello, let me know that you're online. And if you're watching the replay after the fact, go ahead and just type in replay so that I know that you're watching it after the fact. All right. So how's your cortisol rhythm? Let me back up just a little bit and kind of explain to you what cortisol actually is. All right. So cortisol is a stress hormone. It's made by the outer part of the adrenal glands, and this stress hormone is actually a really good stress hormone. It does a lot of different functions inside of the body. Remember, there's no good hormones or bad hormones, but hormones can become unbalanced due to stress that's produced by different types of inflammation that's taking place inside of the body. So the cortisol. So I always say this: cortisol is an incredible hormone when you are in a crisis, when you're in an emergency, like if a bear is chasing you. So that's a good thing. Cortisol is not going to be so good for you if the stress in your life never, ever, ever ends. So what are we talking about, as far as stress is concerned? Well, you may have different physical types of stress that are taking place, chronic injuries, chronic pain, things like that. You may have another form of stress, chemical stress taking place inside the body. This might be due to having digestive issues, having a lot of different food allergies, having viral infections, things like that. But also, mental stress can absolutely wreck your cortisol. So here's the purpose of cortisol. Cortisol inside the body does a lot of different functions. So, for example, if your blood sugar gets too low, the body's going to release, your adrenal glands are going to release cortisol in order to help mobilize sugars to get your blood sugar back up. And that's actually, a good thing. So cortisol is doing all of these different things inside the body, but we consider it a stress hormone. So cortisol, when you talk about your cortisol rhythm, I want to show you something real quick so you can see what cortisol rhythm, what we mean by this. And in fact, this is actually comes from what's known as a Dutch test. And this is a collection which is measuring hormones through urine, but it's also measuring your cortisol output. So let me show you this just real quick. So this is actually on a patient. And when you look at your daily cortisol pattern, here's what it should look like. So when you wake up in the morning, cortisol should be in between these two lines right here. So you can see in this patient, when she wakes up, you can see that cortisol is actually at its lowest. And then as you go through the morning, cortisol should naturally start to go up. So you want it to be up around here. You can see on this patient that cortisol is actually really, really, really high. And then as the day progresses, cortisol should naturally go down in through the afternoon and continue to taper off when, right before you go to sleep. So what's important about this is when you have a normal cortisol rhythm, this is when, you wake up and then you start to have your energy, throughout the day. And then as the night goes on, energy starts to go down and gets you ready to be able to go to sleep. So there's a lot of people that this happens. Number one, some people who have literally like no adrenal output, which is actually a lot of thyroid people. And by the way, if you have very low adrenal output, being on Synthroid should absolutely be contraindicated. So you shouldn't be on it. In fact, it actually says that as a contraindication actually on the medication. So for some people, you'll see that their cortisol levels never get very high. And these are the people who actually need a lot of caffeine in order to stimulate cortisol production in order to try to get that energy back up. So some people will just stay very low throughout the day. Some people will stay high and then not taper off that much throughout the day. And these are the people, if cortisol is high at night, we call these people tired and wired, meaning, they may be tired. They know that they have to go to bed, but they just have a huge problem falling asleep because their adrenal glands are actually so active. In fact, some people are actually kind of upside down, which cortisol stays very low and starts to go up throughout the day. And these are the people who have a lot of their energy at night, yet they're just exhausted in the morning. And so they don't follow what's known as a normal cortisol rhythm. So this has a lot to do. So what can mess with this cortisol rhythm? Well, just like I was saying before, is that stress can absolutely mess with cortisol rhythm. In fact, in this patient right here, I asked patient, like, how do you feel throughout the day? She says, I feel good in the morning, but man, once the afternoon comes, I just feel absolutely exhausted. And by 6 o'clock, I can't wait to go to bed. So you can see that her cortisol rhythm is absolutely off, and that can actually mess with her energy levels. But what's interesting is that if someone has very high adrenal output due to lots of stress and things like that, what happens is that if you have a lot of cortisol output, you're going to notice a hormone that many times acutely is going to skyrocket, and that's actually progesterone. So what was interesting about this woman is you can see, if you look at her cortisol output, how high it is. But when we measured this on a Dutch test, you can see how high her progesterone was. So if her progesterone is absolutely just through the roof, it means that she needs that progesterone in order to be able to manufacture cortisol because of all the stress that was going on. And this could be mental stress, physical stress, chemical stress. But in her case, it was 100% mental stress. And so that's why she had such high levels of progesterone. But here's the other thing, is the reason why she had actually came in was because she was having severe menstrual cramping. And if you understand the hormones and things like that, having very high progesterone is going to actually cause some pretty bad menstrual issues, because progesterone will actually interfere with estrogens, and will interfere with the ability to be able to release the egg mid-cycle. But also, if you're hanging on to a lot of progesterone, you're also going to have a very, very painful menstrual cycle that first 7 days. So the idea is that you don't try to manipulate your hormones. You want to actually balance them. But one of the biggest factors is going to be mental stress and some other stressors. But ladies, one of the biggest things that interfere with your cortisol rhythm, and one of the biggest things that interfere with your menstrual cycle, is going to be mental stress. And that's why on Saturday, we're going to talk a ton about why mental stress is so damaging to the digestive system, why it is so damaging to your fertility hormones, and why mental stress can cause all of these other issues that are taking place inside your body, and why you have to get it under control. And so not only are we going to talk about hormonally, like what happens when you have a lot of stress, but we're also going to give you some solutions on what you can do, not only short-term, but also long-term strategies to make sure that you guys are getting your stress under control. Now, ladies, if you stress out a lot, give me a thumbs up or give me a love, because I know that, ladies, you stress out a lot. And it's not necessarily, a bad thing, because I was having a conversation with my wife the other day, because my son wanted to ride his bike somewhere. and he asked me, hey, can I go ride my bike over here? And I said, yeah, sure, go ahead, have fun, go ride your bike. And then my wife said, hey, aren't you thinking this through? It's like, what happens if there's, what if he falls off his bike and hits his head and no one finds him? Or what happens if there's a kidnapper who's going to go and take him? Or, what happens if this happens, and this happens? And I said, really? I that never ever crossed my mind. Do you understand that to guys, this stuff never crosses our mind? But I know to ladies, because you're built differently, all of that stuff, all of these scenarios are always crossing your mind. And it's a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing as well. So we're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about how it impacts your hormones, how it impacts your digestive system. But obviously, we're going to give you some solutions on what you can do in order to combat that, so that you can start not only being stress-free, but allow your body to be able to recover and your body to be able to heal. So guys, have a great Wednesday. If you have a comment or a question, leave it below. I'll promise I'll answer it as quickly as I can. Make sure that you like this, and make sure that you share this too with someone who is stressed out, and because of that stress are having issues with sleep, having issues with mood, or having issues with their hormones, because I guarantee you they're going to thank you that you shared this with them. So hey guys, be well on this Tuesday night. We'll see a lot of you on Saturday for the stress event. All right, be well.